Bill Gates, welcome to 7:30.
Thank you.
Let's start with climate change. You've said recently that the world's not going to reach its agreed targets of 1.5 degrees or even 2 degrees of warming. Should we be preparing for unstoppable climate change?
Well, we can certainly reduce emissions to zero. In the meantime, while we do those reductions, which is called climate mitigation, we also have to do climate adaptation. Sadly, the poor countries in the equatorial zones are the most affected. Most of the people there are farmers with small pieces of land who won't be able to have the crop output they have today. So we'll have to adapt while we do our very, very best to bring emissions to zero as fast as we can.
Now, at the beginning of your visit to Australia, you had a meeting with the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese. Did you talk to him about the role that Australia could play as a leader in climate change on the world stage?
Certainly, I've had a lot of talks. Your climate minister was in the US. I met a few months ago talking about some of the innovations. My Breakthrough Energy group has been down here quite a bit. We just announced investment in a company, Ruminate, that works to reduce cow-based emissions. So, yes, Australia has a huge role to play. It's very lucky in terms of it'll have some of the cheapest renewable energy in the world.
Do you think Australia can be the kind of leader it wants to be on the world stage when it continues to be such a large exporter of fossil fuels?
Well, I think Australia will be able to export green hydrogen and other clean products. And so it's certainly a country where the opportunity in a green economy is as greater than it has been in the past.
Now, you've also made a very big investment in next generation nuclear power, so-called natrium plants. Just briefly, can you explain how these are better than the old style nuclear plants?
Well, nuclear fission ended up being so expensive that the electricity just wasn't competitive with, particularly in places like Australia and the US, natural gas generated electricity. So the question is there a design that could be dramatically safer but also far less expensive? That's the dream that a company I back is pursuing.
Now, should Australia be rethinking its policy on nuclear energy?
Well, Australia doesn't need to get engaged on this. Australia gets to watch over the next 10 to 15 years and see if this next generation, in terms of its cost, safety, waste disposal, meets these very high goals. If so, hopefully it'll take a look. Should that be a piece of the energy mix? In the meantime, being very aggressive to take full advantage of Australia's natural endowment to do solar and wind, that's clear cut and beneficial to Australia and the world.
Is the threat of the next pandemic as urgent now as the threat from climate change?
Well, they're very different. Climate change just gets worse every year as long as you continue emissions. A pandemic, we're likely to go a fair period of time without either a naturally or intentionally caused pandemic. But when it does strike, we saw it's tens of millions of lives and tens of trillions of dollars. Fortunately, the cost to be ready for the next pandemic is rounding error compared to what it takes to retool the modern economy to solve climate change. So, preparation for earthquakes, pandemics, governments are responsible for their people's welfare. And so a modest investment should make us able to not have a severe pandemic.
You just referenced intentional pandemics. Do you harbour any doubts about the origins of COVID-19?
No, the evidence is very clear that it's naturally caused. It's a bad virus, and we're going to have natural epidemics, and sadly we may have some unnatural epidemics in the future.
A virulent conspiracy theory emerged during the pandemic that you were using vaccines, using the vaccine rollout to control people, even to the extent of people claiming you wanted to insert chips inside them. Now, a lot of those ideas were spread by tech companies, by platforms owned by tech companies. Did you ever complain to them about those debates going on unchecked?
Yeah, I mean, I think every time the question's asked, it helps spread the rumor. So, maybe I should complain even more. But I certainly point out false stories when they're published, or even people who highlight sort of almost silly misinformation.
But did you talk to the tech companies about how those debates were being carried out?
Yeah, there's a constant dialogue of anybody who gets, this crazy stuff published, of going to the digital platforms and saying, hey, look at this, look at that.
Now, it's not just the attacks on you. You say more broadly that digital polarization is one of the forces holding back progress, and it's getting worse. So should you be taking a different approach to how information is managed?
Well, every country has different laws and different approaches. I don't have the magic solution to misinformation.
Do you wish that Elon Musk hadn't bought Twitter, for example?
Elon's done a lot of great work. I'm not sure that's the best use of his time, but it's up to him what he decides to do. We have a generation coming that will hopefully be creative about social media and how we make it more of a force for good.
Last year, you pledged to give away almost all of your wealth. What drove that latest decision?
Well, there's nothing new there. I talked for decades about the fact that the wealth I'm lucky enough to have, largely through the success of Microsoft, and then now the incredible generosity of Warren Buffett to the Gates Foundation as well, that's going to go to reduce inequity, to back brilliant new ideas, brilliant new science, to do things like eradicate polio, eradicate malaria. I enjoy that work. It's going very well. And so, we're on track. I'm very lucky that means the foundation's continuing to grow. We'll get to over $9 billion a year of giving for these causes of inequity.
You make it sound like it was automatic, but it had to begin somewhere, and it did begin with you and Melinda and Warren Buffett starting the Giving Pledge, where very wealthy people pledge to give their wealth away in their lifetimes or in their wills. But in Australia, where philanthropy lags a long way behind the US and the UK, what is your message to very wealthy Australians who don't give generously?
I think giving is very fulfilling. I think in some ways it's not a favor to your children to have all the wealth show up. Every parent has to decide what the appropriate level is. In my case, I can see the impact that philanthropy is having. It's my full-time work. It allows me to work with incredible people. And so, yes, I hope I'm an example that encourages more philanthropy. The Giving Pledge is not about pooling money. We simply get people together to share what they're learning, what they're motivated by. And, the dream is that over time, the quantity and quality of philanthropy will improve.
After your divorce, I think there was an agreement that the foundation would consider after 2 years whether you and your former wife would still work together. How is it working? Will you continue to work together?
I expect we'll continue to work together. My wife, Melinda, does great work. She's an amazing contributor to the work of the foundation. And, it benefits from the skill sets we both bring.
Now, one of the issues that's dogged you is that of your relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Do you regret the relationship that you maintained with him against Melinda's advice and wishes?
Oh, I've said that you're going way back in time. But yeah,
new audience.
I will say for the, over 100th time, yeah, I shouldn't have had dinners with him.
Epstein had a way of sexually compromising people. Is that what Melinda was warning you about?
No. No, I had dinner with him, and that's all.
And that you regret the relationship, the acquaintance?
That I had dinner with him.
And the relationship between the foundation and Epstein, which
There never was any relationship of any kind.
That's the past. Let's go to the future. From reading what you said, you are both excited and also concerned about where the AI revolution is taking us. We're very caught up at the moment with talking about how ChatGPT is going to be writing student essays. But you've also described a future where vast numbers of white-collar jobs are replaced. What else should we be preparing for?
Well, innovation is always going to surprise us. AI is going to help us with teaching kids. It's going to help us with access to healthcare workers, making healthcare more efficient. The economy is always changing. Agricultural productivity, changed the job mix. Very few people are farmers today, and food doesn't require much of your budget. AI is going to affect not just blue-collar jobs, but also white-collar jobs. There'll be plenty of time to adapt as this increased efficiency gives us more economic options.
But are there dangers that we haven't foreseen yet? We're talking about the kind of the immediate next step. Where do you see the dangers lying? What should we be preparing for?
Well, the digital revolution, things like misinformation, that is unexpected, and this is a whole of society thing. There are unpredictable things that come as you have new technologies. Overall, life today is significantly better than 200 years ago, 100 years ago. So the downsides of modern technology, we have been able to manage those to the benefit of mankind. People are literate. People live 3 times as long as they did before, and this is the next wave of human innovation.
And just this question on AI, do you think that AI will ever build a machine to replicate Bill Gates' brain with all its quirks and complexities?
No, not exactly. It'll be able to help tutor kids and give medical advice, but it won't match humans.
Won't match Bill Gates?
Not in the fullest sense of human personality, no.
Bill Gates, thank you very much indeed for joining us.